Arkadaşlar merhaba, Wikibenz YouTube kanalıma hoş geldiniz. Bugünkü videomuzun sponsoru Mercedes Parça Marketi'ne videonun başlangıcından önce teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Zira kendileri 50 yıldır Mercedes parça satışı üzerine uzmanlaşmış bir firmadır. Aynı zamanda 5000'den fazla stoklu yedek parçayla da online parça satışında Türkiye'nin en büyük firmalarından biridir. Açıklamaya bıraktığım linkten de Mercedes Parça Marketi'ne girip oradan parça ihtiyaçlarınızı giderebilirsiniz. Bugünkü videomuz Mercedes'in W124 serisinden 500E, BMW E34 M5 Touring ve Audi RS2 Avant modelinin kapışmasıyla ilgili olacak. Bu video Hagerty tarafından çekilmiş bir video olduğu için özellikle de sesli seyredilmesi gerektiğinden ben size bunu orijinal sesiyle sunacağım. Kendilerine de buradan katkılarından ötürü teşekkür ederiz. Videonun sonunda da böyle sürpriz bir bölüm var. Orayı da mutlaka seyretmenizi tavsiye ediyorum. Bu kapışmanın haricinde ikinci bir kapışma daha olacak. Onu da mutlaka kaçırmayın. Lütfen kanalıma abone olmayı ve videolarımı paylaşıp beğenmeyi unutmayın arkadaşlar. Satılık araçlarınızı da klasik otom.dm üzerinden bana gönderebilirsiniz. Şimdi sizleri bu güzel videoyla baş başa bırakıyorum.
Let's start out with the purplest of the trio, the BMW. If there's one generation of M5 that's the forgotten generation, it's the E34. Not because it wasn't good looking or fast, but probably because its S38 engine was mostly carried over from the E28 M5. Except in Europe, they got a wagon, and they got a 3.8 liter, the biggest straight six BMW has ever produced. It made 335 horsepower at a violent, independent throttle body screaming 6,900 RPM. And even though the wagon weighs 192 pounds more than the US spec sedan, that made only 311 horsepower. Which is exactly the horsepower the Audi RS2 made, 311, but from a much smaller engine. The double overhead cam 20-valve inline-5 displaced just 2.2 liters, but used a turbo to make 10 Newtonian meters of torque more than the BMW. More importantly, the transition from regular Audi wagon to RS2 was carried out at Porsche. So not only is the RS2 typically Audi gorgeous, it's Porsche fast. And it may be down one cylinder on the BMW, but it's up one gear. Like the BMW, the Mercedes has 6 cylinders and 5 speeds. But this is the coolest 5-speed in the world because it's a dogleg. The US market did get the famously well-built Mercedes 124 in wagon form, but we never got it with a manual paired with the late M104 twin-cam 24-valve 3.2-liter straight six. It may be 100 or so horsepower down on the other two cars, but I'm not concerned in the least. That's because Mercedes made an even faster 124. This is not purple, it's not a manual, and it's also not a wagon. But like the Audi, it was built by Porsche, and it has a V8. It is the Mercedes 500E. It's 5-liter, quad-cam, variable valve timing, 32-valve V8, made 322 horsepower. That's midway between the others, but it trounced them both in torque. Will the 4-speed auto-tragic transmission ruin the day? Or can the ultimate non-purple 90s sedan trounce the ultimate 90s purple-ish wagon? Scheiße! That was not supposed to happen. Okay, the Mercedes has the least favorable power to weight of the entire group, and yet it left those two other cars for dead. That is 7.5 car lengths back to the BMW. Whoops. This is why numbers don't always tell the whole story. The Mercedes gets off the line with a little brake torque and just enough wheel spin not to piss off the non-defeatable traction control. Displacement plus variable valve timing means this thing makes ludicrous torque everywhere, and despite its long 49-mile-an-hour first gear, it's almost even with the other two cars on the launch. It's old school automatic slam shifts instead of cutting power. So each of the 2 times it shifts, it just gains even more ground on the other two cars. It crosses the line in 14 seconds flat, barely into third gear, with the other two cars, distant memories in the rearview mirror. With an aggressive launch, the M5 gets off the line with just the right amount of wheel spin, so that the big S38 is coming on cam right when the tires hook up. It pulls like a monster to 7 grand, just a dainty little kidney grill ahead of the Mercedes. But when it comes time to shift, the Mercedes pulls away. From that point on, the Benz just keeps pulling further and further. Meanwhile, the real close race is back here between the two wagons. You know, the cars that probably should have raced against the Mercedes wagon. Getting a 30-year-old turbocharged all-wheel drive manual transmission Audi off the line in a hurry is the kind of thing that could bankrupt a small nation. So we did what any prudent enthusiast would do. We beat the shit out of it. But we only did it to the point where we didn't break it. Gott sei Dank, which is, thank God, in Audi speak. The all-wheel drive Audi launches hard enough to bottom out its rear suspension, but ultimately manages to stay out front for just a fraction of a second. It quickly runs out of revs in first and requires a shift into second, which is where it drops from first place to last. Reason why? After the shift, you gotta wait for the turbo boost to build back up again. This actually pulls a tiny bit harder in gear than the M5 does, but the gaps in acceleration after each shift put the car with the best power to weight ratio in the back. God, does it sound good though. Oof. Imagine you were lucky enough to grow up in one of these really fast cars. You'd go to school and you'd bench race your friends' parents' cars, proudly boasting that your dad had the fastest wagon of them all and the world's best radar detector. Well, it's 30 years later and you want to recapture that speed, that thrill, that muscle. You know what you need, right?
A Miata and a brand new Valentine 1 Gen 2 radar detector. They're sponsoring this episode, Jason.
Randy, Valentine 1 has been inadvertently sponsoring my driver's license for more than 20 years.
Me too.
Oh.
I love this thing.
Love this thing. If you ever want to know what death tastes like, kiss your filthy 20-year-old radar detector. Anyway, with barely more than half the weight of the 500e, the ND2 Miata doesn't exactly scream speed. Will the Miata's 181 horsepower be enough to stop Randy from humiliating himself? No, that's short first gear.
cheap 5-liter badass supercar V8 Mercedes barely kept up with this Miata.
Yeah? Let's see what happens when the road turns. Dead.